Well, community advocates are calling on the city to do more to address dangerous speeding on Parkside Drive. New data obtained through a Freedom of Information Act reveals the top 46 highest speeds the camera has clocked are all over 100 kilometers per hour, with the highest recorded speed coming in at 154 kilometers per hour. Well, that's nearly 4 times the posted speed limit. Well, the community organization Safe Parkside says today the camera remains missing after being cut down for a 7th time back in September. They're also calling on the city for updates on the delayed Parkside Drive study, which was approved by council back on 2021. And while community members are calling for more action to address the speeding, the Ford government has said it plans to implement a total ban on these automated speed enforcement cameras. Well, for more on the government's response, we're joined by Ontario's Transportation Minister, Prabmeet Sarkaria. Always appreciate your time, Minister. Thank you so much for joining us. First off, I want to get your reaction to yet another piece of new information when it comes to this ongoing discussion about the fact that you've got people who are driving upwards of 4 times the speed limit on this stretch of road that has already killed 3 people due to previous accidents. What's your reaction to these latest numbers?
Oh, well, thanks for the opportunity here, Jamie. I think, the data that's been presented here proves exactly the point that Premier Ford and myself have been trying to make, that these cameras are ineffective. We've got data from 2022, 2023, 2024 that shows that speeding has increased, or this excessive speeding through this zone has continued to maintain itself. What we push for is measures that will calm the speed at the point of entry into one of these zones. A speed bump, realistically, you cannot go at those speeds. If there is a speed bump in one of those areas, which would prevent a vehicle owner or driver going through this area at such a high speed. If the approach that we take is proactive rather than a reactive approach, which sends you a ticket 3 weeks later, a lot of these individuals will not stop speeding. They'll take the ticket. We really, really need to focus, and I think this data proves it over a 3-year period, that we need to focus our efforts on ensuring that we stop speeding at the point of entry into any of these school zones. And that's what we're focused on, working with municipalities to do that.
Minister, for instance, Parkside Drive from Bloor to Lakeshore, how many of these speed bumps would you put down?
Well, we'll work with the city municipalities, I think specifically in areas of school zones where these cameras have been located. We'd be happy to work with to ensure that we get these traffic calming measures installed there. The areas very specifically, especially around school zones, community safety zones, zones that have been identified by the community where excessive speeding has happened. In this case, we've got 10 incidences over the last 3 years of continued speeding. Let's really look at targeting and focusing the enforcement into that area, whether it's through our police officers, whether it's through traffic calming measures, especially near school zones. That's what we're focused on, and that's what we want to look at.
Well, I guess a lot of the concerns from the community, you've got Parkside Drive that's right adjacent to a park, and regardless of how many of these speed bumps you might put down, if one driver is going 154 kilometers an hour and they hit that speed bump, you can imagine that car is going to go careening in the air, potentially onto the sidewalks where people are walking. So I think a lot of people can appreciate some of the additional measures, but the reality is you've got multiple studies, you've got more information from this Freedom of Information Act that is just highlighting the dangers, and a lot of people feel that just a couple of signs or flashing lights or a couple of speed bumps is not necessarily going to be the solution.
Well, I think to that point, a lot of these individuals that are going 150 kilometers, 160 kilometers, 40, the data that you've presented, rip through these cameras. They don't actually get the ticket till 3 weeks later. I think that's the essence of the point here, is how do we focus on ensuring that at the point of entry into one of these areas that you cannot speed. And that can be through a variety of measures. Speed bumps is one of them, larger signage, other traffic calming measures that we can put into place by looking at various other ways. If we look at the remaining, I would say 400 plus municipalities that actually didn't implement municipal speed cameras We can look at what they've done. There's only 37 out of the 444 municipalities that actually implemented municipal speed cameras. Our position has always been getting a ticket 3 weeks later doesn't stop you. Many of these cameras, I think the one that you cited, is issuing over 70,000 tickets. If our goal is to limit the speed and limit at the entry point of which, where kids are or where these school zones are, where the parks are, we need to ensure that we have infrastructure in place that limits the speed at the point of entry so we keep everyone safe.
But wouldn't it just be an added tool on top of all of the other resources and things that you guys want to implement? Because clearly, and I spoke to the authors of that study from Sick Kids Hospital, there's a very big difference by getting hit by a car doing 40 kilometers an hour versus a car that's doing 60, 80, or 100. That's the difference between life and death, Minister.
Well, I think that's why a speed bump would be very effective at getting that individual to reduce their speed. Going over a speed bump at even 80 kilometers an hour, 60 kilometers an hour is probably going to do significant damage to your vehicle, which is significantly higher than a ticket that you'll receive 3 weeks later. So I think that, from our perspective, it would be way more effective, and especially in a zone where you're trying to limit the speed to 30 kilometers, which is referenced here with a park or a school zone close by. So I think if we take that into consideration, absolutely. Speed bumps, which can do damage to your vehicle, which will at the point of entry stop the individual from going to an excessive speed, are going to be very, very effective at achieving the outcome of public safety.
Minister, while I have your time, I got about 30 seconds left, and I got to get your reaction, especially being an MPP for Brampton, given the news that's breaking today about Stellantis moving its facility down south. I want to get your reaction to this, and I want to get your opinion on whether or not you think the strategy from the federal government and the tough talk from the premier and running $75 million ads is, do you think the strategy is working?
Well, look, very disappointed with the news that we heard out of Stellantis. Obviously, it impacts the community, and not just the local community, but the thousands of jobs that support that auto plant. Premier Ford, our government have always been there to support the workers. We're investing $20 million into our power centers. But most importantly, as Premier Ford reiterated today, this is why it is so important to maintain tariffs on Chinese EVs as a conversation across Canada continues. That's our position. We need to protect our workers, not only in Brampton, all across Ontario against these threats. But we're doing anything and everything we possibly can. Premier Ford and our government are launching that ad to hit the American people, to make sure they understand the consequences of these tariffs through somebody that is revered with many of those same voters that have voted President Trump in and Ronald Reagan's speech. So we're putting every dollar, every effort into preserving and saving these jobs, and Premier Ford will always be there for workers across Ontario.
Ontario Transportation Minister Prabmeet Sarkaria, we appreciate your time as always. Thanks for joining us.